Hello everyone. Hopefully you had a nice eclipse day. I'm talking about the second coming. I don't really know. I'm trying to make this nice, but it's really, there's one thing I want to say here, which is that when it comes to people and their coping mechanisms, which are their ideologies. Their ideologies are like these coping mechanisms. I heard Luke Thompson talking about this.
I mentioned the other day, I don't know if I mentioned it on a live stream, but I was talking to my local buddy about coping mechanisms. When I first learned what that was, I was like, well, that's bad. We need to get rid of those because I just want to be dealing with reality, pure unfiltered reality, right? I don't want these coping mechanisms shielding me from stuff. Like I just, the cave you fear to enter holds the answer that you seek, or like until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you'll call it fate. Jung, these Jung quotes that I like. And so I'm like, we need to get rid of these coping mechanisms. But then I started thinking of them as I changed and evolved, as I became a different, same person. I was like, well, you need to love the entirety of you. Like, is your ego bad? Like, once you learn that you have an ego, you're like, well, I need to get rid of that ego because that's just blinding me to reality too, Like, I don't want this. I want to get deeper, or I want to get into the super ego or whatever. But then I started thinking like, well, you could almost think of a coping mechanism as like an angel. An angel is there just protecting you from something you're not ready for. It's the angel with the flaming sword. Like, you ain't ready to come in here. Like, you got to die. And so a coping mechanism is almost like something that it's protecting you from a fear that you aren't ready to deal with. And like, is that a bad thing? Well, I don't know. You're just not ready to deal with it. Like, what's the point of beating your head?
I don't think it is a bad thing, because if you are not in a place to where you can have some structure and some place where people can help you land in a safer place, if you pull the fundamental core thing away from someone that is allowing them to cope without protection, that person can be in a very dangerous place, up to the point of suicide.
Yes, right? So here, I'm going to criticize myself. I think one of the biggest coping mechanisms that people have in the modern world is their ideological possession.
Yes.
So is it loving right now for me and you to be talking about object A, cause of desire, and ideological possession, and emancipatory jouissance? Because what that's going to do is free you from your ideological possession. It's just like the awareness of it and the looking at it is the beginning.
When you break an ideological frame, it is crushing.
And how it can be not cool to just roll up and eviscerate somebody's coping mechanism, because it can leave them in a world of hurt. However, I feel like this is kind of a hot take, but I don't know. I think that we are perhaps called to do that regardless. Hopefully not in a overly violent way. However, in a exorcism type of way, where to exercise the spirits, because if an ideology is like is a being, an ideology is a being, which is, we talk about ideological possession. We want to exercise the person, and how is that done? It is done by discerning swords, shing shing, swords. Christ bears a sword, shing, whoo. Discerning the spirits. You see them. By seeing them, this is what, it's kind of like the whole thing of demonology, when it comes to you can control the demon or command the demon to leave or something by using its name. And naming is like this acknowledgement of the through line of something, right? And it's like, naming doesn't necessarily mean saying something out loud. It's kind of like an identification, right? So it's like to identify the spirit, to see the pattern which is possessing someone, the being, the spiritual pattern with agency. And again, please have forbearance with me if I'm sounding overly gung-ho about this. However, I do have a strong conviction in this respect. However, it is somewhat speculative. But to bear the sword of a discerning eye, is to exercise the spirits, and it is to judge the world. It is to judge the angels and the demons. Perhaps where, and this, we can't think about this as something like this is something that I think inevitably happens when you are when you are being like Christ, when you are being your true self or something. That I think that's when we have this true vision or something. It's not, we can't just go around thinking that we can judge things, because Christ is the judge, right? Christ has to judge the world through us, in my opinion. Or perhaps. And this happens when you are abiding in the kingdom, and abiding in the kingdom is communion, and is like theosis, is being yourself, is being your true self. The connections there are a little more complex than how I just described it, I think. But yeah. I think that this also goes with the idea of the shadow of Christ being integrated, or the shadow of our understanding of Christ being integrated in that. We have this hippy-dippy love and light, all is well vision of Christ, which often which often excludes the more forthright, perhaps, side of Christ, who rolls up and is like, the way you're doing it ain't correct. You gotta change. But think about Christ when he exercises people of spirits, This is what I think we are called to do in this time period. We are called to do miracles, not for show and glitziness, but because that is the way to the kingdom and the way beyond the beast, the beast and all these ideologies which possess the masses. So I don't know, this is kind of what I've been saying for a while. However, I feel like I've formulated it slightly better here, hopefully. I don't know. So let me know what you think. Again, I kind of experience this as a phenomena. This is a thing that happens, which I kind of experienced, and I was moved by the potential implications of this phenomena of seeing somebody and apprehending the patterns which are happening through them. And this also connects to the consummation insofar as discerning the patterns also entails seeing the person, seeing the soul, and perhaps their guardian angel or something, their hypostasis in the eschaton already, seeing that, to see that in the other, to see all that is there, but to see and make way for that that version of that themselves which is atemporally present from the future or something, from the eschaton, from the hyper time, the deep code or something. So yeah, I'd love to hear thoughts. I guess to support my conviction, I should say something more confident along the lines of, do not let your intonation or gesture be possessed by the patterns of those around you. Of course, we must do this to some extent, however. What I see when I look through the world today is a vast sea of mimesis and mimicry. I do not see souls, I see possessed, corrupted souls. And it is time for a change. I do not have time. That's not what I mean. I should be less trivializing about this. What I mean is I wish not to tiptoe around the spirits. Do not bear Christ's sword in vain. Or something. Right. That is all.